Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Today we'll be speaking with Sarah. She has type 1 diabetes and Addison's. Her father had type 1 and Addison's as well. He's passed on now from a heart issue that Sarah is concerned she might also have. We're going to talk about type 1 today, as well as Addison's and how it adds to dealing with type 1 diabetes. Please don't forget that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. Don't forget to save 40% off of your entire order at CozyEarth.com. All you have to do is use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout. That's JUICEBOX at checkout to save 40% at CozyEarth.com. When you place your first order for AG1 with my link, you'll get 5 free travel packs and a free year supply of vitamin D. Drink AG1.com/juicebox. The Diabetes Variables series from the Juicebox Podcast goes over all the little things that affect your diabetes that you might not think about. From travel and exercise to hydration and even trampolines. Juiceboxpodcast.com. Go up in the menu and click on Diabetes Variables. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Eversense. The Eversense CGM is more convenient, requiring only one sensor every 6 months. It offers more flexibility with its easy on, easy off smart transmitter and allows you to take a break when needed. EversenseCGM.com/juicebox. Today's show is sponsored by Omnipod 5. Do you have fear of missing out on Omnipod? If you do, you have FOMO, but I can get rid of it for you at Omnipod.com/juicebox. Omnipod 5 is no longer just a great option for people with type 1 diabetes. It's also now FDA approved for people living with type 2. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Cozy Earth. Use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout at CozyEarth.com and you will save 40% off of your entire order.
Hi, I am Sarah, or on Facebook, you'll know me as Sarah Vell. And the reason I'm giving away my identity right out the gate is because not even my mom calls me Sarah, because there were so many Sarahs born in the 5-year time span that I was, that it just really didn't make sense to answer to it for most of my youth.
What does your mom call you?
Vel.
Vel?
Pretty much everyone calls me Vel.
You want me to call you that?
I'm not upset. You can call me Sarah or Vel. I know that you think of me as Sarah. And obviously people that encounter me online think logically, well, she's got a first name, so I should use it. So
well, at least there's not 1,000 Sarahs when somebody's messaging you, Sarah.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Okay. Well, I'm going to see what comes out of my mouth. What do you think of that? We'll figure it out in a second.
That sounds great. Maybe it'll be none of these things, or I'll just be known as the April Fool from here on out.
So, is it the first?
It is.
Oh, interesting.
I was so excited to try and organically get you to say that something in my life happened in the alley behind a Dunkin' Donuts, because it cracks me up every time you say that.
Oh,
and today I got an alert from Dunkin' Donuts that they're now being called donuts only, which I feel has to be an April Fool's thing, but I just don't know what's going to happen.
Do people not dunk their donuts anymore? Probably not, right?
If they were going to drop one or other parts of their name, I would think they would go the KFC route and drop the donuts, since they have other things.
Just be Dunkin'?
Yeah. I think my app says Dunkin'.
I don't want to go too far down this, but donuts didn't used to be soaked in sugar. They were more like cake. So I get dunking a cakey donut into coffee maybe. But if your donut is pink and purple and has 33 sugary things stuck to the top, it probably just melts in your coffee.
Yeah.
Right? Oh.
Which could be a sneaky way to add, I don't know, it was the OG fancy latte. I don't know.
Listen, I think we're overthinking. I think what actually happened is a overblown group of PR people in a room decided that they needed to do something or they weren't going to be able to keep their job. That's normally what I find happens. no disrespect. I work with a lot of good PR people with the companies that, the advertising comes through. But there are times that I get on calls and I'm like, why are there 7 people here? I'm like, we're talking about an ad for a podcast. There's I don't think this many people signed the Declaration of Independence on the first day. Like, what are we doing? Exactly. I think they had to come in slowly to sign it. You know what I mean? And I'm sitting in front of 7 people and they all have like 5 of them have thoughts and one of them is clearly the alpha, but not in charge. Then there's the one that's in charge that's more quiet. Then there's 2 people who don't say a goddamn word through the entire thing. And I'm like, what are they even here for? And all I can think is, if you fired 4 of them, you could give me their money. So anyway, I don't know what they're doing.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Nevertheless. So Sarah, you and I live near each other. Is that right? Like, reasonably speaking?
We do. Yeah.
Do you think that might be why you like me? Do I remind you of people that you grew up with?
No, because I did not grow up here.
Oh.
I only moved here like 2.5 years ago.
Oh, that goes my whole theory about you online. I just figured that you were like a Philly girl and I made sense to you.
No, although I think that my energy very much works on the East Coast. Like, I love it. I love it on the East Coast. So I came to college on the East Coast in North Carolina. Then I moved back to Denver. I'm from Colorado. Like, I've lived there a good chunk of my life, but moved out here 2.5 years ago, and it's been fantastic.
Cool. I like you about 4 inches closer to that microphone, in case you're wondering. You sat back when the dog came.
Yes, I actually will also move the mic further back so that.
Yeah. All right. So how old are you when you're diagnosed?
3.5.
Oh, really?
And I know that I think I just heard you talking about like how it doesn't really matter if you were the day before 3 or the day after 3, but we all know that toddlers are very into if they're 3.5 or things like that. So
at that time, were you very into being 3.5?
Probably. I was probably a pretty textbook 3-nager. So
I, by the way, don't care. It's just for the course of storytelling. That when people get lost in, it was 1986, and they're like, or was it? Might have been 87, 5. It's because my uncle, he had that haircut, and I'm like, oh my God, no one cares. Like, stop. No one's going to remember. We need a frame of time. It was in the 80s. Keep going.
Yes. Yeah. So at some point in the mid 80s, I was at some point in the early 80s. So it was March of 81 when I was diagnosed.
Nice. So 91, 2001, 2011.
81.
20, wait 81. A minute. Hold on. Yeah, but I'm counting. 91, 2001, 2011, 2021. That's 40. And then 3 more years. 40. Are you 46? Almost 47?
I am 46, yes.
Sarah, you look like you're 15. That's why I was thrown off by the counting.
Thank you. This makes life even better.
Wait, you're 46?
Yeah.
Holy crap. Good for you. Congratulations. That diabetes keeps you young, doesn't it? Look at that.
Something like that.
Probably not how that works.
Yeah. I think my body would disagree, but at least my face is holding up the ruse.
So let's give people just a tiny bit of understanding. Are you regular in MPH when you're diagnosed as a baby?
No, I was pork.
Oh, wow. You make it that far.
Which I was highly allergic to.
Good.
But was told, this will be a recurring theme in today, but was told, well, some people just get hives and bumps.
And that's what we get.
Well, and obviously, like, it's better than the alternative of, like, eat as little as possible and keep moving until you die anyway. So,
so Sarah, tell me about this. Like, so even as a baby, you got your first injection, you broke out, or did it not start right away? My daughter is 20 years old. I can't even believe it. She was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when she was 2, and she put her first insulin pump on when she was 4. That insulin pump was an Omnipod, and it's been an Omnipod every day since then. That's 16 straight years of wearing Omnipod. It's been a friend to us, and I believe it could be a friend to you. Omnipod.com/juicebox. Whether you get the Omnipod DASH or the automation that's available with the Omnipod 5, you are going to enjoy tubeless insulin pumping. You're going to be able to jump into a shower or a pool or a bathtub without taking off your pump. That's right. You will not have to disconnect to bathe with an Omnipod. You also won't have to disconnect to play a sport or to do anything where a regular tube pump has to come off. Arden has been wearing an Omnipod for 16 years. She knows other people that wear different pumps, and she has never once asked the question, should I be trying a different pump? Never once. Omnipod.com/juicebox. Get a pump that you'll be happy with forever. This is from a listener. Thank you for introducing me to Cozy Earth. For my birthday, I bought stuff to update my bed, sheets, comforter, and a blanket. It honestly made our lives better. My husband and I used to have a conversation, in quotes, every single morning about who pulled the covers so far to their side or how we were too hot or too cold. That never happens now. Both of us sleep better and more comfortably. And don't get me started on the clothes. Y'all should just try one piece. Use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout at CozyEarth.com and you will in fact save 40% off of everything you put in that cart. CozyEarth.com. Use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout.
Yep. Nope. Right away.
And they were like, well, at least she's not dead. Keep doing this.
Basically, yeah.
How long did that go on for?
It went on until I got on regular NPH and things were less bad then, but we'll jump way forward and then we can go back to the 80s if you want. But I figured out within... Huh?
What's less bad?
Oh, well, I mean, like less aggressive hives and things like that. Like it's all relatively tolerable, but I figured out last year with the help, like this is how I found the podcast, that I am still allergic to now an additive that they put into every single subcutaneous insulin. It's just like on an allergy scale, if they go from 1 to 5, I'm probably like a 3.
Oh.
We had to rule out a lot of other reasons why insulin never really seemed to work in my body the way it was supposed to. And I was very relieved to figure out that it's not something wrong with my body, but just my body reacting the way a lot of people's do to this specific additive.
Do you know what the additive is?
It's called metacresol.
Okay.
METACRESOL.
Well, I wasn't ready to Google. META.
CRESOL.
I got it. Organic compound with formula. I'm not going to read you the formula. It's colorless, viscous liquid that is used as an intermediate in the production of other chemicals. It is a derivative of phenyl and is an isomer of P-cresol and O-cresol. Interesting.
My best understanding is it's either a preservative or an antibiotic. So obviously I understand the need for it, but it is problematic. I'm like a huge science nerd, but I found a journal article and a study from 2015 where they tested 4 different insulins of varying metacresol ingredient strengths or whatever. And within 5 minutes of exposure, even to the insulins, the cells that touched it were either dead or toxic. I think this is why they really encourage, it's not the insulin losing efficacy that they tell you to switch out pod site or the pump sites every 2 or 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's because everybody's system, like those sites being constantly saturated,
has a reaction at some point. That makes sense.
It just is much more aggressive.
And did you learn about that because I did those episodes with people who had insulin allergies?
It's how I found it.
Oh, okay.
So we'd been wondering for a few years. I got on a pump first in 2000, basically 15. And it worked pretty well for a few years. And then the summer of 19, I would change sites and get an almost instant occlusion, or it would last like a few hours and then I'd do a big bolus and occlusion. I mean, Tandem sent me 3 different pumps just in case it was a hardware issue. Kept happening like it would happen with a brand new pump. So I just gave up on pumping in the summer of 19.
Okay.
But really wanted to try it again because it helped my control so much.
Mm-hmm.
So I was trying to get back on it. And kept having the sites would last maybe 12 hours, but I would just keep throwing so much insulin at. I mean, when I found the group and the podcast, I think like a year ago or 11 months ago, my average daily was like in the 250s.
Okay.
Yeah. I was waiting for your eyebrows to fly off your forehead. So it's, obviously like I'm throwing a ton of insulin at things just to be like, calm down. And then even like I found the podcast and heard about Crush and Catch It. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try this. Like, let's see what happens. And would just throw insulin. And it either, well, usually like the site would be dead within like 12 to 14 hours max. So I think when I came into the group, I think I'd asked in a tandem group about like, does this kind of thing happen to anybody? Or is it possible to be allergic to insulin? Like we're starting to see some of the symptoms that I have always had on my face we started to realize were kind of like lesser versions of my reaction to known drug allergies. So we know I'm allergic to pork-based drugs. Found out again the hard way in 21 in the ICU when they gave me heparin. It's I think a blood thinner to prevent clots when you're lying in a hospital bed.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody checked that it is pork-based. So I had like a terrible allergic reaction to that. And it's very similar to my sulfa-based drug allergy reactions. It's lesser. So we're kind of like, wait a minute, like this is kind of, maybe this inflammation is not based on something I'm eating or some other thing, but between the inflammation and like my face gets like really red and it burns almost from underneath. It's like a sunburn, but from underneath my skin.
Okay.
Which I'm now finding out may or may not also be kind of a mast cell issue or a histamine issue. I've met some people that have similar responses that know that they have MCAS. I don't, but I mean, it's a possibility. I suppose anyone with an immune system as active as mine might have something along those lines.
Has anyone talked to you about like one of the injectables for your immune response?
No. Like the kind of things that they do for, what is the AS, the ankylosing, like the biologics?
Yeah, the biologics.
That kind of injectable? No.
Yeah, no. Have you thought about it?
I mean, I guess now I have.
I mean, I don't know.
It had not previously occurred to me.
I'm trying to think of the name of them right now.
I know it's like Humira, and there's I think 4 or 5 of them.
Yeah, Zolar, I think is one they use for like a lot of things, like spontaneous urticaria, which is just hives, and
right,
idiopathic as well. By the way, idiopathic means they don't know how it happens. That's fun.
Yeah.
I like when they give it a big name to say, I don't know what's happening.
I know, just to make it even more mysterious.
Yeah. I mean, I just wonder. I don't know if you want to be injecting more things. With your luck, it's probably made with pork, but.
Well, yeah. Who cares? I mean, I've taken the stance of I'm open to using my body as a science project because I know nobody else liability-wise is going to, and they won't do it with the same urgency that I want to get to the bottom of things.
No. If we waited for everybody's timetable, we'd all be dead by the time something happened.
Yeah.
Tell me, what is the real world implications of all this, like day to day? So
I figured out last year that it is possible to be allergic to insulin. So, and I found 4 studies, and I think at least one, I think Sacha, the first guest on You're Allergic to Insulin, like the one with the really bad allergy.
The girl from Canada.
Thank goodness my allergy is not anything like that, because I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Like mine is tolerable. It just, like, things don't work the way that they're expected to. I figured out that it seemed to be better for my body to do kind of a slow drip basal only for that. I figured out, this is earlier than I expected we'd talk about this, but like, thank goodness for the podcast, because the pre-bolusing episode was instrumental for me, not in the same sense as it is for everybody else, but because when I was first like, okay, like I want to see how long it takes the arrow to start moving, I realized with Novolog and my pump, it takes between 90 and 120 minutes, like an hour and a half to 2 hours. So
Wow.
I inflame so quickly at pump sites or injection sites even that I just don't absorb. And for as long as I can remember, I've been told like, well, you just have really bad absorption. Like you're just going to have to deal with it. Nobody ever talked to me about the timing of the absorption, like what a wrench that was throwing into the works. And they also told me, diabetics scar badly. We expect to see that, but you scar worse than any diabetic I've ever seen, just as far as scar tissue building up at injection sites, things like that. So it was funny. I was telling a friend, I did something the other day where they were like measuring every part of me. And the lady was like, it's kind of funny. She was like, one of your arms is like remarkably bigger around than the other. And I was like, I bet it's my left. And she's like, it is. How did you know? And I was like, I am allergic to insulin and I am right-handed. Well, not even allergic, but I'm right-handed. Any injections I did in my arm could only be left. Like I wasn't going to experiment with being a lefty to give myself a shot.
I'm trying to figure out if I could do with my right arm into my right hand and my right arm.
For anyone who can't see what's happening right now, Scott is trying to see.
I look like a bird trying to fly for the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and you don't think you could have injected left-handed?
Well, I mean,
you could.
I started doing my own shots when I was 5. Yeah. I wasn't really gonna like.
No, I'm saying there's a way you could do it, but you might just have been trained to do it the way you were doing it at that point.
Well, yeah, and I think it didn't really occur to me that like it wasn't that big of a deal to me.
Yeah.
So, but I haven't done an arm injection.
Can you imagine if everybody had to think about that?
Yeah.
So you basically have like bowler's arm. You have just, or like a pitcher. You have like stronger. Even my son played baseball. The right side of his body was stronger than the left side of his body.
Well, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not even strength for me. It's my left arm. I haven't done an arm injection in probably 10 years. Mm-hmm. It is still 1 inch more in circumference, like around than my right.
Do you think you're just inflamed in general? This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Eversense. And Eversense is the implantable CGM that lasts 6 months. EversenseCGM.com/juicebox. Have you ever been running out the door and knocked your CGM off? Or had somewhere to be and realized that your adhesive was about to fall off? That won't happen with Eversense. Eversense won't get sweaty and slide off. It won't bang into a door jam, and it lasts 6 months, not just a couple days or a week. The Eversense CGM has a silicone-based adhesive for its transmitter, which you change every day. So it's not one of those super sticky things that's designed to stay on you forever and ever, even though we know they don't work sometimes. But that's not the point. Because it's not that kind of adhesive, you shouldn't see any skin irritations. So if you've had skin irritations with other products, maybe you should try Eversense. Unique, implantable, and accurate. So if you're tired of dealing with things falling off or being too sticky or not sticky enough or not staying on for the life of the sensor, you probably want to check out Eversense. EversenseCGM.com/juicebox. Links in the show notes. Links at juiceboxpodcast.com.
I mean, yes.
Do you have trouble losing weight when you want to?
Yes. Let me say my thing and then you say your thing, because I can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Okay, good.
I started thinking last night, like I've put on a ton of weight in the last 8 or 9 months.
2,000 pounds? No, I'm just kidding.
No.
Not an actual ton? I'm
carrying like 50 extra pounds right now.
Okay.
And probably 30 of them came in the last 8 to 10 months, which lines up with when I started pumping again. And I am starting to wonder if this full body inflammation is my body's response to the basal insulin, like that constant supply. So I'm starting to think, as much as I like love and really feel like I depend on being able to manipulate basal, now that I understand how to do that, I might try a Traceba just to see how that works. if like any of this will move. The other reason I feel like I have a lot of trouble losing weight can come up now or later, but it's related to my Addisons. So,
okay.
And not the steroids, or not directly the steroids.
Yeah, and not the doctor from Grey's Anatomy either.
No,
Addison Montgomery. Never mind.
I only think of her as Addie. So
look at you. Tell me about the Addisons now.
Addison's, I think, well, maybe the easiest way to get into Addison's was diagnosed finally in 2011. I'd been severely symptomatic for 2 to 3 years leading into that, which was extra frustrating because I'd been in a study for like a decade. Like they knew I would get Addison's. It was a when and not an if, or a most likely when. And they were, every time I went to clinic, they would draw an extra vial to send upstairs to the doctor who was doing the study to test for Addison's related things. So they missed that coming on somehow. Really, really awful for 2.5 to 3 years. In looking back at it now, go ahead.
Vel, context, really awful. What was awful?
So exhausted, like fatigue does not begin to describe. I call it soul level exhausted, like would sleep for 16 hours a day, sleep as late as I possibly could in the morning before like peeling myself out of bed to get to work, but then leaving myself enough time on the way to work to pull over in this park that was about 5 minutes away from my office. And it's only a 12-minute commute, so it should not have been this difficult, but to pull over in this little park and to vomit 3 to 5 mornings a week, every day for 2+ years. And like so dizzy that I didn't know what to do with myself. And then I would come home from work and fall asleep and peel myself up off my futon like at least once to let my dog outside, and then like fall back into bed and repeat the whole thing the next day. For me, those were the most noticeable symptoms. Now knowing what all Addison's and low cortisol symptoms are like, I suspect that a lot of the freakishly low blood sugar events that I had during those times were much more cortisol related than insulin or diabetes related.
Yeah. Tell me what do you notice between cortisol and blood sugar?
So well, first, anyone who's listening to this, like, please listen to episode 649, Autoimmune with Christina. It like literally saved my life when I found it. Christina does a spectacular job explaining the relationship between cortisol and blood sugar, but really cortisol and insulin are the body's system for managing blood sugar. It's not cortisol, or it's not insulin and glucose. Cortisol helps our bodies know when to release glucose. It triggers the liver to release glucagon, to release stored glucose. It also helps to metabolize carbs or anything else to achieve blood sugar, to be able to get into your systems when there's too much insulin on board, either as a non-diabetic human or as someone who's taken too much insulin or not eaten enough, or whatever set of variables may line up. I have gotten my diabetes now in the last year to the point where insulin is incredibly predictable. Yay.
Good. Yeah.
For the first time in my life, insulin and diabetes are predictable. So I now know that if my blood sugar is low, it is a cortisol low. Took me a little bit to realize that, but I didn't know until a year ago that the reason sometimes I would drink what felt like a whole liter of juice and my blood sugar wouldn't get above 50 is because my body didn't have the green light to be able to process it.
Okay.
So
it's crazy. Hey, why would you be vomiting in the morning? Do you like functionally understand that?
That's an adrenal crisis thing. So, and I've started calling it a muted crisis. Basically, my thyroid was so absentee during this time that it like slowed down everything enough that I didn't wind up in the hospital or dead. That's how most people are diagnosed, kind of like Christina was, or in the hospital.
Yeah.
With Addison's. Like, it's very rare for people to catch it without some kind of catastrophic event, which is so frustrating.
Yeah. And to button this up for context, once you find out you have Addison's, how is it managed?
So I take steroids daily to replace the cortisol. It is not the nightmare that most diabetics think of when they think of steroids, because when you're at the proper replacement dose, it just keeps your blood sugar level. It doesn't shoot you sky high. So the reason that diabetics get high blood sugars when they take steroids is because the steroids are called glucocorticoids. Like, the people forget about the glucose part of that. Its purpose is to create blood sugar and to create insulin resistance, because in fight or flight days, it would not help you to have a bunch of insulin being super sensitive in your body and to not have enough blood sugar or actual energy to run from a bear or a saber-toothed tiger or whatever thing was happening. So the reason that either if I'm over replaced, my blood sugars will get high, regular diabetics without adrenal issues will have that, is because that's their whole job, is to create blood sugar and insulin resistance.
I would run from a raccoon with the same ferocity as a bear. I just want everybody to know that. You don't have to go to saber-toothed tiger to get me upset and get me running the other direction. I'd be like, that thing looks...
The trash pandas strike fear into your heart.
I gotta go. Like, for sure. Oh my God. So Sarah, have I ever told the story of the raccoon that jumped on Arden's car?
You have not. Or not in any episodes that I've heard, at least.
She was coming down the road we live on, and it gets a little windy at one point, and big curve, a lot of trees. You kind of have to slow down. You know, you can't go through it too quickly. So she was driving my wife's car, and she's coming through there. There was a raccoon on a trash can, and she looked over, and she's like, oh my God, there's a raccoon. And as she thought that, the raccoon jumped onto the moving car's hood. That's all. That's the whole story. I love it.
Kamikaze Raccoon would maybe there's a greater. Were you would you have run from a raccoon before this?
I don't know, but you might have just named the episode Kamikaze Raccoon.
Yes.
Good job. Because before I was like, metacresol allergy. That's boring.
No, that's super boring. I'm way more fun than that. Like, please,
Kamikaze
hold out for
Raccoon might do
better.
it. It's fantastic. What do you do for a living?
My main job is I am a tax attorney, which I make way more fun than it sounds. Maybe this will tie back into the Addison's a little bit at least. So Addison's is you don't make cortisol. Your body physically cannot handle stress, physical, emotional, mental, any of the things. My job at the time I was in onset and diagnosed was negotiating against the IRS or the state or city taxing people for businesses or people that fall behind with their taxes. Not like surgery where a bad day means that somebody dies, but a bad day could mean somebody's bank account gets cleaned out and they can't pay their employees or keep the lights on or any of the things. And love the work. I still do things in that vein. Just not as much anymore. But the worst part of it was the industry of tax resolution is completely based on make these people that owe the scariest people on the planet, aside from the mob, make them pay our company for you to work for them. And if they won't, you threaten them with withdrawing your power of attorney and leaving them hanging in the wind, and given monthly quotas to twist the arms of these people who I then get to know on the phone every day, see their financial statements, but management's just hit your number. So
you're the heavy in this scenario, pushing people.
No. I was not in management. I'm the one being told, get them to pay you.
But how do you get them to pay you? It's collections, no?
No, it's not collections because I'm not the IRS.
Okay.
I'm effectively the private defense attorney to the IRS being the prosecutor.
Okay. Hey, you said the scariest people are the mob. Who are the next scariest people?
Well, I think a lot of people are pretty scared of the IRS or the state tax people or whatnot.
Yeah. Wow.
So
anyway, you've got this job with like a lot of, right? Like
a lot of stress. Well, and I literally would go in every day and not know if I would still have a job at lunch or at the end of the day. Like they fired people willy-nilly.
For not making quotas?
Or just because it was a day that ended in Y. Like, yes.
Gotcha.
But especially for not making quotas. And my personality was, I'm going to do I'm not going to be a jukebox for these people. Like if the money runs out, I'm not just going to stop helping them. Like I am a helper. Like
I see.
Lots of write-ups and screaming sessions and screaming voicemails left on my work phone from owners about like, get your shit together or get out or, quit letting these people free ride. And
does the Addisons make that job more or less difficult?
Put me in the ICU 4 times after I was diagnosed.
What's the process that happened?
When your body can't handle that much stress, basically your organs start to shut down. For me, I know when I'm going into adrenal crisis when the vomiting isn't just once. Like I was vomiting just once on the way to work, maybe twice, like in a row. If I start vomiting now, I know that it doesn't stop until I'm in the hospital with IV steroids and IV Zofran. So, I mean, basically your organs start shutting down. There's also like some really intense electrolyte imbalances involved with Addison's, and I seem to have an even more aggressive form of it. So I trend to super high potassium levels when I'm in crisis. Yes.
Sarah, does anyone in your family have these issues?
Here we are where I thought we'd be at the beginning of the podcast.
See what I did there? Now John Travolta's alive again. He's on the toilet. That's all.
Ta-da!
There you go.
So I am the medical carbon copy of my dad. He was type 1, diagnosed when he was 13. He diagnosed me, well, I guess unofficially, and then Addison's when he was 18, hypothyroid at some point in there. He is why I was in that study to see when Addison's would happen, because they knew I had the antibodies and they knew that I was his carbon copy, basically.
Yeah. Wow. I hate that for everybody. Because it feels like once you see it somewhere, you think it's probably coming, but you just gotta.
Yes and no. I think I never really, and I think the study didn't start, like they never told me like Addison's will for sure be a thing until I was probably must have been when I was in my 20s.
Okay.
My dad died when I was 18.
How old was he then?
He was about to turn 51. So he was 50.
Did he die of a heart attack?
Massive. Well, we thought so.
Okay.
I actually got my mom to send me his autopsy last night because I've had a theory for a while now that it wasn't actually a traditional heart attack or a heart attack because of severely blocked arteries, like kind of what we think of as the heart attack. But the autopsy says that there was no definite evidence of an infarction. So the myocardial infarction is that's what Bailey had on Grey's. Like that's the heart attack, right?
Uh-huh.
But instead that it was, gosh, I don't remember all of the words right now, but basically it was an issue with cardiac insufficiency. So his heart wasn't pumping enough blood.
Right.
Are you ready for me to make it like real full circle right now?
Go ahead.
So when I am having an Addisonian issue, not always in crisis, but most of these have been in crisis, my potassium gets super high. I think the normal, like top edge of normal on most labs is 5.1 or 5.2.
Mm-hmm.
I have found out several times when I am above 7, my legs become temporarily paralyzed. Like they become so weak that I can flex in your chair right now. If you were going to stand up,
I feel
how like you flex your quads and like you can feel everything flex and then you stand up, right?
Right.
So I can flex, but I don't I'm physically unable to stand up.
How long does that last for?
It lasts until I get to the ER and they pump me full of insulin. helps to reduce potassium because potassium in the blood attaches to blood sugar. So when insulin moves blood sugar into the cells, it takes potassium in with it, lets sodium back out of the cells. I don't think anybody really understands how important electrolyte balance is because it is normal for most people. Steroids, one of my steroids helps to suppress potassium. And I recently found out that also thyroxins can help to suppress potassium. So I don't really know what my levels would be like if I didn't take all 3 of those meds daily.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And what's the relationship between your heart and the potassium?
Potassium is what helps your muscles to be able to flex or not flex. I think, and have thought for a little, within the last year since I started figuring out all of this potassium stuff for me, I have been thinking that my dad's death was he had just a flood of potassium in his system.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so much that it also paralyzed or severely weakened his heart.
Okay.
So the first time I went to the hospital for the leg paralysis thing, because it happened at least once before that when I was in the airport. And thank goodness, I don't know. I think I just had figured out when this happens, I just have to chug a bunch of water. It's usually when my blood sugar is really high.
Okay.
So in the airport, it resolved itself enough that I could get on the plane. The next time it happened, my friends were able, I was meeting with a bunch of friends. They were able to slide me into a wheelchair at the building where we were meeting that happened to be there, get me out to a car, get me to the ER. They are freaking out in the ER. I think it's just I didn't really know. I'm cracking pasta puns, and they are transferring me to the ICU, which I figure, it's standard because if you have to get admitted as a diabetic, they put you in the ICU, right? That's just what has always happened for me, I think, because of the insulin drip.
Right.
So they're like, yeah, we're putting you in the ICU. And I'm like, you guys always do this. Can you just my legs are better now. Can I just go? And they're like, no, you're going to the ICU. And they told me when I was ready to get out of the ICU and be discharged, buddy, you can't be this close to the mic. Everybody's going to think both of us are heavy breathers now. They were like, we have been in the hallway with the crash cart this entire time waiting for your heart to stop, because that's what happens when potassium gets this high. So I learned that night that potassium is the lethal part of lethal injection.
Oh, really?
Because it stops your heart.
We're killing people with banana extract? Is that crazy?
Yep. Too much or too little potassium will stop your heart.
I'll tell you what, you're a party calling your mom and asking for your dad's autopsy.
Yeah.
She must have been like, hi, honey, what's up? And you're like, oh.
No, she, I don't know. March is the anniversary of when he died. So we tend to all think of
talk about him a little more. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's been 28 years now. So it's a little bit more removed.
Mm-hmm.
And leading up to this, obviously, I've been peppering her with questions about all sorts of things just because I'm when you're 3, when you're diagnosed with diabetes, you don't really remember any of it.
Well, I don't know how much our parents remember either, because I don't know how much I remember at this point. By the way, potassium chloride, a potassium salt, which increases the blood and cardiac concentration of potassium to stop the heart via an abnormal heartbeat and thus cause death by cardiac arrest. That's the lethal injection definition. How about that?
So since then, I think I've been to the ER 5 or 6 times with potassium issues. The worst was in 21. It got so bad that my legs were gone, but then also my arms were starting to go.
Oh.
And it was getting really and then my neck, and it was getting really hard to breathe. So I think now, being further removed from it, it was probably my diaphragm was starting to go.
Yeah, no kidding. That's where the pasta joke comes from, right? You can't, that's what you were saying?
No, that was way, way before then.
Oh, I thought you meant your limbs were like noodles.
No,
Oh.
It just my policy when I'm in the ER, especially, or in the hospital at all, is to just be the nice, funny patient that people want to come back and check on if they have a gap in their
remember me,
yes.
please remember me.
Well, or just like, hey, she's funny, or like she's really nice and like thanks us when we go in there, rather than yelling us at, about things. Like I just am, and plus, like I know that they get so much of that. Otherwise, I'm like, I'm here regardless. I might as well be a good human about it.
I like you're like you wanted them out in the hallway thinking, let's save this Vel chick. Like if there's two people to save and we only have enough time for one, let's go get her.
If there's 2 code blues, like let's be here.
Like, I don't know, that girl was funny. Let's go this way. Okay.
Yeah.
Jesus, I don't know if that works or not, but it might.
What's the next gonna be? Like,
seriously.
No, they were mostly just like, you are like, we're literally waiting for your heart to stop and to restart it. And you're in here like making jokes
and
like nothing is happening.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So my potassium, when like everything was going, was at 9.2. And in talking to any medical professional, it's usually kind of entertaining to see their faces when that happens, because I mean, eyebrows gone.
Yeah.
Because they're all like, I have never spoken to anyone who has been at that level and is still alive. So I don't know why I keep surviving this outside of, in the last year, I've gotten really involved in type 1 communities, Addison's communities. And then there's a condition called it's basically potassium related periodic paralysis. Most of like the primary version of that is all genetic. It's a genetic condition. Mm-hmm. So I know that I don't have that. I have some version of secondary periodic paralysis, but being able to make connections between all of those, like the people in the too high potassium paralysis group are told like, eat a high carb diet. And I was able to connect the dots for them. This is why when your blood sugar goes up, your body releases insulin, and that moves the carbs, blood sugar, and the potassium back out of your blood. And they're like, oh my gosh, like nobody ever understood why this was a thing. We just did it because it works.
I was getting ready to say, I wonder if a GLP wouldn't help you with weight and then have you using less insulin too. And then you wouldn't have so much with the allergic reaction with the insulin. But
every time I hear your Zepbound or Wegovy or weight loss diaries, I'm so tempted. I think the issues are twofold for me. The biggest being because, as I understand it, part of the job is to change or to slow down metabolism in the stomach, right?
It slows digestion.
So I think that will mess with my steroids because they're pills.
I mean,
it is possible to pump cortisol. I just am not ready to wear 2 pumps. So
it's just a little pill, right?
I mean, it's a little pill, but it's my day's supply of this life-giving substance.
So is it down there being digested very slowly?
I mean, not currently.
You know what I mean? Like, does it go and it's just absorbed and then you have it for the day? I think I would check on that because let's be clear about 2 things. I'm a fucking idiot and I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay. I don't think that a GLP would slow down the absorption of your steroid pill. But if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I would ask.
I know that people with, like, I know that Christina from that episode 649, she also has Addison's, a type 1. She also has gastroparesis, which I know is an aggressive, like it would be an aggressive side effect of a GLP if she has had to start pumping cortisol because she like was not absorbing her oral meds anymore.
Yeah.
So I just don't know. The other reason I'm concerned about it is because Addison's causes low appetite. Like I don't really have an appetite right now. I also was recently diagnosed with ADHD, which the diagnosis was a blessing because like every system in my body that might have an effect on emotional regulation kind of exploded at the end of last year, beginning of this year, leading to like a bunch of mental health crises and like all sorts of things, like almost checked myself into a facility one weekend. So like the diagnosis is so helpful because I know what's happening. But right now I need to be on meds and it is a massive appetite suppressant. So I'm like having to force myself to eat
anyway. Yeah.
Most of the time. Yes.
So GLP agonists may slow down the absorption of certain orally administered medications. So you got to figure out if that's one of them that's going to be touched by it. But the hunger thing is different because I had like a project around the house this weekend. Yesterday was Easter. So I'm going to tell you everything I ate yesterday because I was really busy. I had 4 marshmallow peeps. Did you put them in the microwave? No, I like them stale. So the person who left them out for me opened the plastic the night before.
So you're going to go ham at the stores on the 50% off sales today.
You just open the package and let the air get to it for 24 hours before you eat them. I had 4 Swedish fish before I said to my wife, I don't think Swedish fish are a thing I can eat anymore on GLP meds because they make it feels kind of heavy.
Interesting.
I had a glass of water and then I worked like all day. I just didn't eat. And then at like 6 o'clock, my son's like, can I eat something? And I was like, oh, I see what he's saying. He's saying, will you make me food? So I had a baked potato and a steak, I think it was a New York strip steak for dinner. I couldn't finish the potato. I ate most of the steak and that's all I ate yesterday. And I don't think I was ever hungry once yesterday. So that is what GLP will do. Now,
well, and I already have that twofold between the Addisons and the
I don't know what would happen. I mean, maybe it couldn't get worse. You know what I mean? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
It's tough because
the other interesting thing with Addison's is, annoyingly, that loss of appetite is a sign of low cortisol. And it is also, fasting is a cortisol drain. Like your body should be pumping out more blood sugar to give you literal energy to live when you haven't eaten in a long time. This is why we see dawn phenomenon, because it's to break the fast, right? So
so maybe this would be counterintuitive to you. It's possible. It's possible it wouldn't work at all. I don't know.
I mull it over all the time, but especially every time you air a new episode, because I'm like, oh, I'm so tempted every time I hear these.
All I can tell you is I was active this weekend and busy, so I ate less. I am 2 pounds lighter this morning than I was on Friday. And I feel better and better every day. But it's just, I'm not dealing with obviously all the other things that you're dealing with. Yeah. Well, that's crazy.
No, it's always interesting to think about.
Let's talk about your diabetes here at the end.
Okay.
In your note, you said that you've in the past had upwards of a 14 A1C.
Mm-hmm.
How long ago was that?
That was at some point in the 90s. So I think it was 9 or 10 years after I was diagnosed.
Okay.
So, it wasn't because I wasn't diagnosed in DKA. My dad had noticed over a few days, I started wetting the bed again, which had not been a thing for a while. Super thirsty, super hungry, really extra cranky all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so they started lining up little Dixie cups of urine and using the test strips, because that was the thing in 1981.
Yeah.
There was no at-home blood meters for regular people, at least. And so that was what, I think he was taking me to preschool one day, and I was extra feisty about something and probably either really wanting more water or something. And he turned the car around and was like, let's start testing. I think this is diabetes.
Yeah.
So they figured that out. So I wasn't in DKA when I was diagnosed.
How was his management, do you think?
It was as good as it could have been at the time, with the tools that he had available. So he was diagnosed when he was 13. So that would have been sometime in 58.
Wow.
He was on either bovine or pork insulin up until the same time that he and I both switched.
Did he have any of the allergic stuff with it too?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
But my allergy, it's not aggressive enough that anybody would have ever, I didn't even know could be a thing. It's not immediate open sores at injection sites like the girl from Canada or things like that.
So there would have been maybe no way for them to put that together back then if he had that problem. Okay. So through your life, let's break it up into sections. Do you know what your A1Cs were from 3 to 15 years old?
I think I was just looking back as far as I could find records of, and I think like more often than not, it was between like 9 and 13 most of the time. Some 8s when I was in college.
What do you attribute that to?
Well, probably high school and college. I played volleyball.
Okay.
All through, like from when I was 12, played year round, like club, school, whatever I could do from when I was 12 all the way through college.
I see.
Played for my college team. Don't remember testing my blood sugar really ever during college. Like did a lot of treatment based on how I was feeling, which we all know is basically never accurate.
If you're always 250, for example, and
or higher,
and you throw in some exercise, you're not probably still getting low all that often.
No, I don't think, but I would feel like I was getting low because I was like dropping so much. So then I would still like chug up, like I would like stop in practice occasionally and like chug a thing of juice and then like get back in. But I was probably like just to get me from 150 back to 250 where my body felt okay.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Your body's so used to that higher blood sugar. Yeah. You're probably treating a low feeling to get yourself from being at a number that at this point you wouldn't be okay at being at.
Absolutely terrified of lows because I had seen my dad have so many seizures through my childhood, and I'd had a few myself. Like, that alternative was not an option.
Yeah.
I think also that probably a good chunk of my dad's seizures and lows were Addison's based rather than diabetes.
Okay.
But nobody, I mean, even like I learned about this cortisol blood sugar connection from the podcast and from Addison's groups on Facebook in 42 years at that point of being type 1 or 12 years of having Addison's. No doctor has ever mentioned it to me.
Wow. So you have genuine information that's helped you about Addison's and insulin allergies from the podcast?
Yes.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
I will unabashedly credit the podcast and the group and the like inspiration to join other communities on Facebook. I will unabashedly attribute that to saving my life.
No. Nice.
Well, and I
great.
Until last year was just pretty sure that because I'm the medical carbon copy of my dad, right? That my fate was also to die of a heart attack around age 50.
Yeah, it's the only thing I haven't asked you yet that's on my list here. You think you're in at the end?
You tell me.
I know.
Your schedule is much more.
No, not the end of the podcast, the end of your life.
No, not anymore. So, but until last year, I was really like just kind of resigned to this is, I mean, it was like a very aggressive version of, well, that's just diabetes, right? Like nobody ever said, like my doctors would say like, okay, well, let's aim to get you into the single digits next time. But no concrete ideas about how to do that.
Yeah. Can you imagine if you went to a money manager and they were like, hey, let's focus on making you a millionaire next time I see you. Get out of here now, you silly kid.
Yeah.
Get going. How would I do that, sir? Anybody? No?
Yeah. Like a suggestion at least? Like point me in a direction?
You want to whisper a stock name
in
my ear?
Or are we doing like the weird thing where you blindfold me and have me spin around a bat and then try to get like...
I find that the most fascinating thing. Like, let's get your A1C down. How are we going to do that? No mention of that at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what a great idea. I also should be taller.
Works for me. Like any ideas, like anything.
It's fascinating.
And just, constantly having the idea that it was all something wrong with me.
Yeah.
Versus, so it's really hopeful now. I still am in touch with one of the nurse educators who is also type 1 at my old clinic. And I texted her in October when I got my first ever 6.1, but like first time in my life I'd been in the 6s for A1Cs. Yay, podcast. And told her about figuring out the allergy and that I was doing pump basal and then bolusing only with Afrezza because it does not have any additives.
Nice.
So, and she was like, oh my gosh, this is like, can I share this with your endo? And I was like, please. And she's like, we have a patient that we're pretty sure has a really like a pretty bad insulin allergy. And I like want to see if this might be an option. And I'm like, please let this help somebody else.
How come you don't do that? Are you just strictly a Afrezza and a basal at this point?
I only bolus with Afrezza.
Okay.
So when the podcast episode 530 is about tunneling and leaking.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, ooh, like maybe this is part of why, like maybe the tunneling is why my sights go bad so quickly. Then I started experimenting with like how big, I think in the episode it says like sometimes it can be like in the neighborhood of 5 unit bolus where people start to see problems with like putting in that much insulin at once.
Right.
So I was like, okay, like I'm going to see what happens. And tried at 5, tried at 4, and it would still like within 5 to 10 minutes, like the site would be pretty much done.
Wow.
So then the next time, so I got down to figuring out that my body can deal with a bolus of 0.8 units at a time. Even if I go up to 1 unit, I can literally feel it itching underneath my skin. It's not like a skin, like I feel it underneath my skin. It's itching, and then not long after, the site is gone.
Did you ever try Fiasp or Lumjev?
I use Lumjev in my pump right now.
Okay.
It's about a 45-minute delay. Like it takes me about 45 minutes to see the effects of a temp basal increase or a decrease, like if it cuts it off for a low. So right now, I got really lucky because I got my new Basal IQ pump on the last day when Basal IQ was an option from Tandem.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that at the time, but I knew that I needed to get back on Basal IQ because Control IQ, my delay with insulin is too much. We're even in like sleep mode where it increases the basal to deal with highs. I would see that effect like 45 minutes later, but I'd already bolused with the Afrezza. So then it would bottom me out. And cutting off the insulin still only like saves me with a cortisol low where I keep staying low because it takes about 45 minutes for the absence of insulin to start showing a rise.
It's fascinating that you have multiple things trying to kill you, and those things are also fighting with each other. That's yeah.
Well, and they're the things that keep me alive, right?
Yeah, like, at the same time. Jesus, are you tired from all this? Like, I mean, mentally?
Yes, but I don't have an alternative, so.
Just what it is. Are you married? Do you have kids? Yeah. Do you have any of that stuff going on?
Not married. I would have loved to be a mom. I was told through my 20s and 30s, especially after the Addison's diagnosis, that getting pregnant would basically be a death sentence for me and or baby. I have since, in the last year, met multiple people online with both who have had numerous successful pregnancies. I think really my doctors just didn't know what to do with me.
Yeah.
So it was easier to say, like, to scare me to ever think about having a baby instead of being like, okay, well, let's figure this out.
You think having been told that about children stopped or changed the way you dated?
No, although I am grateful that I don't have children with any of my exes from those points in my life. It would be terrible to be tied to most of them for a period of years. It led to a breakup within the last couple of months because the guy I was dating, I think now, even if I did get pregnant, I don't know that I physically have the energy and steroid reserve basically to be able to raise an infant, much less a whole child. And although I don't feel like the end is within the next 5 years for me, I'm still fairly confident that my end will be earlier than a lot of people's, unless we can figure out this potassium thing, because sometimes it happens outside of crisis. And I don't know why that is. I'm incredibly lucky to have made it through all of the times that I should have died. But I'm not really trying to test how many more that may be.
Yeah, no kidding. Hey, so here's a question. Do you feel like you have a medical team that's helping you get to this answer? Or are you literally just picking through the internet and listening to other people?
I am picking through the internet. My current endo is helpful only in that he will write whatever prescriptions I tell him to write.
Mm-hmm.
But that also comes down to I am literally figuring out what my dosages should be.
On your own, completely.
Like for things like T4 and T3 meds. And when you have too much thyroid on board and it burns through your cortisol super fast and puts you straight into crisis, found that out in November when he medicated me into crisis. So I figure out my doses now, but I should not be the one figuring out
Yeah, I think that's just
these
how
kinds
it
of
is.
things.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I've done an endocrine residency in the last 4 years, but I have 0 certificates to put on the wall. Like, nobody else should listen to me. But yeah, I don't really have a team right now.
Yeah.
I am probably moving back to Denver. Like, by the time this airs, we probably won't live near each other.
Why?
Well, because I moved out here for the guy.
Boy, I know.
No. I did the breakup, Scott. Like, please, like.
Oh no, I mean, I've been in a relationship. I know how they end. I'm just saying that. Yeah. Listen, guys cheat or women break up with you. That's how relationships end.
Well,
right?
And it's just, he's a lot younger than me and wants to have kids, and it's not fair for me to have him choose no kids to be with me, especially when I don't know how I feel about maybe signing a kid up to lose a parent early, like I did, because I know that pain.
Do you ever think about not wanting a kid to maybe have Addison's or diabetes?
Oh, I mean, obviously, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I think right now the bigger thing for me, I think honestly, like between like how the last year has been and like with the way that I know that things are going and with tools like the podcast, like let me keep the diabetes, like I like whatever. And if a kid had diabetes, I would deal with it.
Okay.
Addison's is more of a challenge, but I'm figuring out a lot of that now. The bigger hesitation is getting through this thing in my head of like not wanting to sign a kid up to lose a parent at a young age.
Yeah. Well, let's finish a little bit with that, because you're 46 and your dad passed when he was 50, but that's a number of years ago now, right?
Yeah.
But it's still very impactful to you. I can tell when you're talking about it. Like, yeah. So you're still upset that he's gone.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm adopted and my dad didn't live with me for a while and he's been dead for a while and I'm not that upset about it. So that's why I'm asking.
I think like, in addition to being the medical, like I'm very similar to my dad in personality, and like he was a lawyer, like to help people, didn't always accept like tangible money and as payment from them. Like he found a way to make it work for like a lot of those things carried through.
Right.
And I was like absolutely a daddy's girl until I wasn't. So
I see. No, I mean, it's still, how about your mom? Did she remarry?
She has. And sorry, Mom, like I know she will listen to this. Sometimes it's really sad because even her current husband acknowledges like, I will never be like Ken. Like they all kind of know that he's the runner up.
Your dad was a good guy.
Great guy.
Yeah. And that's not just you, like.
No, like universally
people
acknowledged as a great guy. Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry. That sucks. If he was a dick, you wouldn't even miss him. That'd be maybe he did you disservice by being such a good person.
No, he was. Yeah.
No, probably not.
Probably not. But it's perspective is everything. So maybe I'll think about like, if only he hadn't been such a good guy.
Yeah. Damn it. Is there anything we haven't talked about that we should have? Because I have one more thing for you, but I want to make sure we get to all your stuff.
I think the biggest thing for me is. Man, there's so many things. No, I think for me, the biggest thing maybe stems off of what I just said about perspective is everything. So if nothing else, if you are listening to this, there's a few podcast episodes that I feel like are perspective must listens for everyone.
Go ahead.
And those are, I think, Christina's, so number 649, Quadoimmune, Mike, number 531, like at some point, Scott, like that episode has had such a deep impact on, I think, everyone who's heard it.
Yeah. I just recorded again with Mike last week.
Oh, I can't wait to hear that.
Yeah.
He's really an incredible human. I'm so grateful for him. His episode, I think, kind of really like that was the one that made me be like, okay, I'm going to figure this out.
Right.
So, oh gosh, I had a list of them. Both of Nicole's episodes.
Hold on.
I think it's like 251 maybe.
I'll help you because
151 and 261.
Hold on a second. 151 is complications are complicated.
Yep.
Nicole has multiple serious complications with it. And what was the other one?
And then I think she's 261 maybe is when she came back on.
Pre-owned pancreas.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
And then Sheila, the space musician.
How pissed were you that she wasn't really a space musician? That's 940.
I think I was pissed about that. Sometimes also your episode titles really catch me off guard because there was a recent one, DJ 8 Years.
Yeah.
And I've probably like my cadence in saying that is not how people would expect it to be. But because the podcasts that I listen to as often as new content comes out are yours. And then I listen to a tax podcast from a woman who is very similar to me. So basically now I teach mostly DJs and creatives and people in that space about how to do their taxes and to not be so scared of their taxes.
Oh, that's funny.
So I've been super involved in the DJ and music community for like 25 years. And then the other podcast that I listen to regularly is about DJs. And so I 1000% was like, wait, does that say Juicebox? Or like
that threw
when
you
it was
off a little
DJ
bit?
8 Years, I thought it was his stage name. And
well, that's how I did it. So yeah, I mean, that's why I made the title like that.
I was like, this is such a collision of universes for me. It's so funny.
Didn't end up that way.
Yeah.
Nah. By the way, your microphone changes colors. That's the thing you should mention to people because I thought I was having a stroke for a while.
No. It's pretty entertaining.
You said you do streaming?
I do. So I stream on Twitch and I teach people about tax stuff. Like I talk about tax and business stuff. Yeah.
That's so cool. I think about going on Twitch once in a while, but then I'm like, it seems like a big commitment of my time.
I had no idea what Twitch was pre-pandemic. It saved me during pandemic because all the DJs in the world pretty much started streaming there when Instagram Live and Facebook Live would shut you down immediately if you weren't like Jazzy Jeff or someone famous.
Mm-hmm.
They would stop you midstream. But Twitch will let you stream as long as you want to stream. They just mute it afterwards, so they're not breaking copyright laws. But so I connected with people all over the world in those Twitch streams just by like getting to like be in music again and like it feel like you're going out and whatever. Like that's how I met the guy that brought me here. So yeah.
What's your handle on Twitch?
It's Miss Vel.
MISS. All one word?
VELL. Yeah. I was cracking up when I was getting ready because I think when you were live on Insta the other day, somebody was talking about like, are you going to do like when pretty girls go online and just work? And I do not put myself in the pretty girl category, but I haven't streamed in a while and I need to. So I'm just probably going to do a co-working stream today where I will just be prepping taxes.
Talking out loud what you're doing with your taxes?
Well, not even talking out loud. Like I'll just be working. But then if people want to pop in the chat and ask questions or like just chat, then we will. It's
so funny because the aspect of how Twitch works, I was on that a couple of years ago and I thought this is really perfect for talking about diabetes. But so many of my people are in Facebook. I don't know how to get them anywhere else. It's hard to get anybody else to. It was a thing. I think a lot of us that fell in love and found so much community during pandemic were really frustrated by is like trying to get our like non-Twitch friends to come like check it out. Yeah. And so many, like probably 98% of them never would. And it's just like, well, then we're finding our new people now. So, I mean, if you used Twitch or like
co-streamed then, or even like played a YouTube recording on a channel and just sat in the chat to answer questions or whatever, like you would find new community, but probably the Facebook community would not
come with it.
For the most part, like also be there.
Yeah. No, I know. It's one of the things I keep in the back of my head though. Okay. Yeah. I'm going to go because I think we've done a good job here, but I want to just ask for a favor first. I just realized while you and I are talking, because I don't do video all that often, that I've lost enough weight now that I think I can readjust my camera. So I'm going to have you help me with that, right?
Okay.
So this is me looking to the bottom of my monitor, but this is me looking to the top of my monitor. Which one am I more handsome in? Bottom? Top.
Bottom.
Okay, bottom.
Because bottom is close. It's more eye contact adjacent.
Okay.
Like it looks more like you might like you're looking at someone in that range, but it's at the same level as like, oh, you might look over to your right and see like where my camera is.
Now let's see this. I did not used to be able to handle straight on because my head was too wide, but now I think I can. Hold on a second. This is very exciting for me.
This is like the eye doctor, like camera one or like camera one, like, camera two.
This is like in my house when I say things. I used to say, so when I first started losing weight, I bought some shoes and my daughter was like, you've had like one pair of shoes forever. And I was like, Skinny Scott likes shoes.
I was mostly thinking like new shoes is a strange like first purchase when you've dropped a bunch of weight. Like, did your feet change significantly?
No, not about my weight, just about my my willingness to let people look at me, I guess. So then I went to more clothing. And I made a proclamation to Kelly. I'm like, I'm going to wear nicer. Even when I'm wearing a t-shirt, it's going to be a little nicer. I'm going to spend a little extra money on t-shirts so I don't look like slovenly. And she's like, okay. Then I upgraded some other stuff. And then one day Arden's like, what's going on? I'm like, Skinny Scott loves fashion. Now, I think Skinny Scott might enjoy a head-on camera angle all of a sudden.
It works.
It's better this way. I used to have to be like this. I don't know why. I was more comfortable with myself. But now I'm okay like this. And you helped me realize that today by haranguing me with turning on your camera. You were like,
it feels, I mean, I didn't expect you to keep it on. I just figured when we're doing our pre-interview things.
No, once I liked how I looked, I didn't think to turn it off again.
I just it feels a little strange to talk to someone about all of this stuff without at some point being able to have eye contact.
Yeah, I hear that. I don't feel it at all. I know. I'm so radio oriented with how I like things I listen to. I actually have this thing in front of me that Kelly got me. Hold on, I'll show it to you. It's just this little cutout she bought.
I like it.
It says "Be Bold," and it's sitting on top of some of my my equipment that you guys won't see because it's behind the camera. And usually without the camera, I sit here like this and basically stare at one of the letters in that while I'm talking and making the podcast.
It was my secret trick to make sure that you were mostly awake while we talked.
Do you think I fall asleep? Have you ever thought he's asleep?
No, I'm just giving you a hard time.
Oh, but one time?
It's part of the reason why I was like, I'm just going to let this dog sleep on my lap, because I know I've heard you say usually I'm feet on the desk, leaned way back, just relaxing while we have these conversations.
Sometimes, it happened one time. I was back like this, way back like this. And I thought, you got to sit up, man, or you're going to fall asleep. And it had nothing to do with the conversation. The conversation was absolutely terrific.
Just the comfort. Yeah.
I was like, that's too, I sat way up and I was like, God damn, don't do that again. Plus you have to close the doors. So I lose my ventilation during it.
Yeah.
So it gets a little stuffy while I'm talking. Okay. So I can this is me head on. I'm okay.
Yeah.
So
you're great.
I hate that when you're head on, you can't look away from the camera to see yourself, because then you don't actually see what you look like when you're head on. Does that all make sense, or is that just a fat person consideration?
No, it does. I usually have to in Zoom settings, I think everybody knows that occasionally you're going to see eyes move to look at the camera or look at the monitor. I also will usually try to move the little thing where it shows the faces to somewhere at my eye level. And then most of the time, when it's just the two of us, it's easy, obviously. And I know that my camera is just up a little bit. You could also always get a little tripod for your camera.
My camera's it's on an arm. It moves all over the place. Yeah.
Okay.
So
you could always put the camera right in front of our faces.
That's what I'm doing right now.
Closer to the monitor than where my mic is. Yeah.
That's what I'm actually doing right now, because because I have a pretty large monitor too. So like, I'm trying to think about like, where do I sit so that I'm looking at you? I don't want to stare at the camera. I want to feel like I'm looking at you, but where it doesn't feel like I'm looking away from you. So like,
then I would put the camera in front of the guest.
It is
the guest screen
right
on
now.
Zoom.
The camera's here and your face is right next to it.
Okay.
So I look like I'm talking to you right now?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we figured it out. Okay, let's do lighting too. Not too bright, right?
Yeah.
Too dim or good?
I think it's good.
Okay.
Some people might but I don't need a lot of.
I can go warmer. I can go cooler. Cooler makes me look very Caucasian. Yeah.
It makes you, well, and a little bit ill.
Okay. Yeah, there's yellow. So like right there, maybe. What do you think? There?
I think that works.
This has been very helpful. Thank you. I can't do this with Kelly. I've tried before. I'm like, Kelly, just jump on Zoom real quick and tell me what this looks like. And she's like, get the out of here. I'm doing that. She's like, go find one of your people for that. I'm like, you're my people. She goes, not for this.
I love how your entire family refers to all of us as your people.
Your people. Yeah, your people.
Whether or not we're going to help you or murder you. One, like,
good or bad context doesn't matter. Hey, those people are going to kill you.
People are responsible for everything.
If you want somebody to say something nice to you, go talk to your people. And I'm like, okay. So although
I'm not here to affirm you, husband.
Listen, we're going to end on this, okay? The thing I spent all weekend doing, I'm a little embarrassed, but I'm not. So behind me right now, you can see the chameleon in the.
I also really enjoy that with the new head-on, the chameleon enclosure. What do we call it?
I think it's an enclosure. Yeah.
Okay. Is like just there so that like it's a little bit of interest / like a more interesting background than.
So there's going to be another one.
Another chameleon.
So this one's going to slide that way.
Okay.
And then there's going to be a one there that's actually going to be wider. So it's going to be, it's that whole wall will almost look like 2 chameleon cages when I'm done. But I bought that one because I didn't know what I was doing. I've since then made one. This is very embarrassing. I spent my entire weekend building a chameleon enclosure out of 1/4-inch acrylic.
Impressive.
So I spent a lot of time online on YouTube videos and podcasts, listening and learning.
You're a chameleon connoisseur now.
I've had this very interesting experience over the last 4 months where I've come to realize, I know this is going to sound like something people are like, yeah, no shit, idiot. But all the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows of the diabetes community that I've built, like, where it works, where it doesn't, where people struggle, how they learn, that's mimicked across the world and everything. If you go into like a chameleon community, they have the same ups and downs and concerns. It's really interesting. It's all just people, right? And so it doesn't matter what the topic is. Anyway, I used those resources the way people use me about diabetes and was able to fast forward, teach myself how to build an acrylic. Like it's going to be, I'm so embarrassed by this, but it's going to be 4x4.
That's awesome.
2 feet deep, because the chameleon that I got will, if all goes well, possibly grow to be 24 inches long at the end of it.
Wow.
So anyway, I built this.
So is that the reason for the separate enclosure, or can chameleons be friends?
They can't be together. No, as a matter of fact, in between the two, I'll have to make it so they can't see each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
and not do a mirror. Like, isn't that what messed up people do with like the beta fish or whatever? That like
you shouldn't do that either. Yeah, they shouldn't be seeing other chameleons. Yeah. They'll be together, but they won't be able to see each other. Like, and neither here nor there. I got all done with it. It was all weekend. Like I was at it from like Friday afternoon. When I stopped working on Friday, I started and I didn't get done till like 11 o'clock last night on Sunday. And I got in bed and my wife goes, hey, you did a really good job making that thing. And I was like, oh my God, like this is like the 50-year-old version of sex. I was like, this is lovely. Thank you. I was like, thank you. You really think so? She's like, yeah. And I was like, why are you saying something nice to me? Made me upset. I thought I was maybe like, she's going to be like, and the doctor called and you're going to be dead soon.
She's like sandwiching things between compliments.
Yeah. Also, I'm leaving. like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if she's just trying to lift me up before she dropped me a little bit, but no.
But good thing you'll have 2 chameleons now.
She just said something positive and then it stopped.
Hey.
I was like, get out of here. This is lovely. My God. Also, I can't tell you how thrilled I am with my head-on camera view.
It's fantastic.
I've never once felt comfortable like this in my entire life, and I do now.
Well, shouts to Skinny Scott.
No, Sarah, you helped me a lot today. I wouldn't have said this to most people. by the way. I'm very comfortable with you because of how you've interacted with me online. So thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right. This one's definitely called Kamikaze Raccoon. That's it. I'll see you later. Hold on 1 second.
It's happening.
I want to thank the Eversense CGM for sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox Podcast and invite you to go to eversensecgm.com/juicebox to learn more about this terrific device. You can head over now and just absorb everything that the website has to offer, and that way you'll know if Eversense feels right for you. eversensecgm.com/juicebox. Omnipod 5 sponsored this episode of the Juicebox Podcast, and to get rid of your FOMO, go to omnipod.com/juicebox. That's omnipod.com/juicebox. No more FOMO. Huge thanks to Cozy Earth for sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox Podcast. CozyEarth.com. Use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout to save 40% off of your entire order. If you're not already subscribed or following in your favorite audio app, please take the time now to do that. It really helps the show. And get those automatic downloads set up so you never miss an episode. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. The episode you just heard was professionally edited by Wrong Way Recording. WrongWayRecording.com.